Good day, everybody. This is Chris Pastore from Mainline Family Law Center. Welcome, and today we're going to talk about Section 3502 of the Pennsylvania Divorce Code, the Equitable Division of Marital Property. So this gets into the division of all the assets, the marital assets and debts in a Pennsylvania divorce case. So one of the most important things to note offhand is that how the assets get distributed in Pennsylvania is an entirely discretionary thing when you go to court. So the judge or the equitable distribution master ultimately retains the discretion to say, well, here's how we're going to divide everything. And these assets are then divided on a percentage basis. So typically when you go to court, most cases fall within 50-50 to 60-40 range, with some exceptions, of course. I also want to note that equitable under the Pennsylvania statute does not always mean equal. So there are times that a court, based on their evaluation of any one or all these 13 factors in the statute that we're going to talk about a little bit here today, there are times when they can award a disproportionate distribution of the marital assets and debts. Okay, so again, falling anywhere between that range is usually where the courts fall, with some exceptions, 50-50 to 60-40. So let's take a look at a few of these factors. We won't go through all, but just a few of the main ones that I think are important to highlight here. So number one, the length of the marriage. So the longer the term the marriage, of course, the greater the investment of time there is into that marriage. So the courts are really going to be looking into that to see what happened during that marriage, and the longer then, if there were circumstances where if a spouse was a stay-at-home spouse for many, many years, they didn't work, they didn't earn, they sacrificed their ability to do that, but the other spouse could increase their work and earning power. This can be an important factor that a court can say, well, the stay-at-home spouse may be entitled to a greater piece of the marital estate. So number one, I think, is important. Number three, the age, health station, amount, sources of income, vocational skills, employability, liabilities and needs of the parties. My goodness, it's a mouthful in and of itself. Ages. So if there's an age discrepancy, sometimes that can if somebody's closer to retirement, there can be a greater need for assets. They have a different plan, of course, for retirement, etc. Amount and sources of income. So what sources of income does each party have, and going forward, what are their abilities to work and earn at a certain income level or source? So very important for the courts to look at their vocational skills and employability, of course. What can we do given the skills, the abilities, and the talents that we have in order to earn income? And if there's a discrepancy in that ability or that capacity, courts will certainly look at that and sometimes seek to award with a greater percentage of assets to one spouse versus the other. The contribution by one party to training, education, increased earning power of the other, very important. So again, this is addressing, let's say, what's called a stay-at-home spouse who makes a contribution to the education, training, and increased earning power of the other. So at the time of divorce, spouses are put in a certain position where there's a larger discrepancy in their abilities to work and earn and acquire assets. So in that case, that can certainly call for a disproportionate distribution of the estate. The sources of income in number 6, including but not limited to medical, retirement, insurance. And again, important. What are our income sources going forward? Realistically, do we have a health insurance benefit? Do we have retirement? Do we have the ability to earn and build retirement? And if one has a greater ability than the other, then that's certainly going to be taken into consideration, especially when they come to divide retirement assets between the parties. The contribution or dissipation of each party in the acquisition, preservation, or depreciation of the marital property. So yes, the party, again, contributing or dissipating the marital assets. Sometimes we have those situations, and they get kind of ugly when you go to court. A spouse has taken and wasted away the marital assets, and let's take a look at that at the time of the divorce and what needs to be done to make the other spouse whole. The standard of living of the parties, again, courts can look at the standard upon which the couple was living, especially with longer term marriages. and they may look to award or distribute the estate based on preservation of that standard of living in both households. And so sometimes that requires a disproportionate distribution. The economic circumstances of each party are number 10 at the time of division. Of course, very important to look at that. The courts are looking to financially secure each spouse in their separate home, their separate residence, so that they're able to support themselves adequately in that home and also their children if there are children involved. So certainly they'll be looking at the economic circumstances at the time of the divorce. The tax ramifications associated with each asset to be divided, distributed, or assigned. So important. We always look at this in mediation as well. What exactly is being divided or distributed, and are there tax consequences, to dividing a retirement versus liquid cash, liquid versus illiquid asset, use of quadros to divide employer retirement. So we want to get into all this to understand what are the tax consequences, and that when we're trading and offsetting assets, one from the other, that not all assets are created equal. Some are liquid, some are illiquid, so we're not always trading off apples for apples in every case. So the court definitely wants to scrutinize that as well. So that's number 10.1. 10.2, the expense of sale, transfer, liquidation associated with a particular asset, which expense need not be immediate and certain. So sometimes you acquire an asset that down the line is going to be liquidated. And so you want to take a look at the consequences of that liquidation. For example, the good news is I got the marital home. The bad news is that I got the marital home because now I've acquired all of it. I'm responsible for its care and upkeep, of course. But then if I go to sell it someday, and if I make a huge profit, I may have a capital gain event. So, let's look into that to make sure the spouse knows exactly what they're acquiring in a divorce. There are more factors we can go through, but those are the main ones. And I hope that you have found this discussion very edifying today. And I wish you and your family the best of luck through whatever transition you're going through.